Hello! Today we're diving into a way of life you'll probably want to escape from after just a few minutes. Your life is an endless cycle of backbreaking work with blunt tools, always under the eye of a perpetually dissatisfied master, surrounded by filth, danger, and constant injuries. Every day, you face hunger, disease, taxes, obnoxious neighbors, and rats that are just as bold while enduring never ending exhaustion, damp and cold. Holidays? They're nothing more than rare breaks that end in drunkenness, fights, and a new wave of sickness. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing who's joined us today. Now, settle in. We're getting started. You wake up in the dark, not the sort of friendly darkness one imagines when slipping beneath a blanket, but a cold, damp blackness that feels like a second skin, pressing close and suffocating. Your bedding is nothing more than an old sack filled with straw, most of the straw long since rotted away, replaced by the dust and filth of uncounted nights. The sack smells of mildew and faintly of something sour you would rather not identify. There is no pillow, of course. Your head rests against the rough wooden floor, already slick with condensation before the day even begins. You try not to move much as you wake, because every movement is a negotiation with pain. Your back aches from too many years of work. Your joints creak and pop like green wood over a fire. It does not matter if you are young or old. Your body is not your own, but a tool ground down day after day by the endless routine. In this world, nobody wakes refreshed. The first thing you notice is the cold. It is an early spring, but the inside of your hut holds the chill like a miser clutches coins. Your breath hangs in the air, visible even in the darkness. Somewhere, a rat scurries, perhaps looking for the same stale crumbs you will call breakfast. If you are lucky, the thatch above your head did not leak during the night. More likely, there is a damp spot where rain or melting frost found its way through, dribbling onto your face and soaking your thin shirt. You force yourself upright, clutching the edge of the wooden crate that serves as both your seat and your only piece of furniture. The floor is rough beneath your bare feet, and you can feel the bite of splinters, the sticky residue left by spilled ale, and who knows what else. Your toes curl, searching for warmth, but there is none to be found. Outside, the sky is just beginning to pale. No sunrise, just the slow leaching of darkness from the world, as if the sun itself is too weary to bother shining. There is no time to waste, though you wish there were. The day's work will not wait for your comfort. You hear the distant, monotonous sound of the church bell, calling the town's faithful, meaning everyone, out of their beds and into another day of toil. You count the peals. It is always the same, too early, never late. You take a moment to glance around your home. There is nothing here worth stealing, and even less worth cherishing. Your shirt and tunic, both patched and repatched, hang from a wooden peg. Beside them is your single cloak, threadbare and heavy, with the stench of smoke and rain. In the far corner sits a lopsided wooden bucket, half full of brackish water, and, if you are unlucky, a dead mouse. Your only other possessions, a rusty knife and a chipped wooden bowl, are arranged on a shelf made from a broken plank. There is no window, only a small hole you sometimes cover with a rag. Every morning is the same, and every morning is new in its small miseries. Some days you wake to the sound of coughing, your own or from the hut next door. Some days it is the groan of your belly or the ache in your head that reminds you how little you ate the day before. There is always a list of tasks waiting, unchanging as the seasons. Fetch water, mend your tools, try not to die before the sun sets. Your neighbors are waking too. Through the thin wall, you hear the muffled complaints of old Tom, who lives next door and insists every day that he will die before the week is out. He has been making that promise for as long as you can remember. In the alley, a dog fights a chicken for scraps. Someone swears loudly and inventively as they trip over a loose stone. You almost laugh. Almost, but not quite. There is no joy in shared misery, only the dull comfort of knowing you are not alone. You pull your tunic over your head, feeling the rough cloth scrape against your skin. There is a hole at the elbow, patched so many times it looks more like a spider's web than fabric. Your trousers are worse, stiff with old dirt, and too short to cover your ankles. The laces are gone, replaced by strips of leather you found in a ditch. You tie them carefully, knowing that if they break, there will be no replacement. By now, the sky is a pale, sickly gray. The day promises rain, or perhaps snow. It does not matter. You will be outside regardless, working until your hands are numb and your back screams for rest. You know what waits for you: wood to be hauled, beams to be shaped, the endless rhythm of saw and chisel and hammer. You try not to think about it. You step outside. The village is waking, if that word means anything. Smoke trickles from a dozen broken chimneys. Children shuffle in the mud, already crying from cold and hunger. Somewhere, a rooster crows, late as always. The air smells of damp earth and rotting straw. This is your life. This is every morning, from now until the end. There are no holidays, no unexpected joys, only the slow grinding away of days and years until, one morning, you simply do not wake up at all. Breakfast. The word is almost a joke. You sit down on your crate, shivering, and reach for your daily feast. A hunk of yesterday's bread, if you are lucky, or perhaps a piece from 2 days before, dry and hard enough to chip a tooth. There is no butter, no cheese, and certainly no meat. If you have salt, you sprinkle a few precious grains on top and feel, for a moment, almost wealthy. You bite in. The bread resists you, crust more stone than food, and your teeth ache with the effort. You remember, briefly, the last time you saw a loaf fresh from the oven. Warm, soft, fragrant, given to the master carpenter's family while you stood outside, pretending you were not hungry. You washed down the bread with a gulp of water from the wooden bucket. It tastes of moss and something faintly metallic. You try not to look too closely. Sometimes there are little things swimming in the water, invisible in the dim light. You have seen people boil their water, but firewood is precious, and you would rather take your chances than use up even a handful of dry twigs. You drink quickly, hoping for the best. You think about the last real meal you had, a piece of rabbit stolen from a trap by the river and roasted quickly over a smoky fire. You ate it so fast you almost forgot to taste it, and for days afterwards you wondered if anyone had seen you. There are harsh punishments for theft, even when it is only a scrawny animal that nobody else seemed to want. Your stomach growls at the memory, and you suppress a bitter laugh. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to wake up with no hunger just once. What would you do with that energy? Would you run? Would you laugh, sing, dance? You have heard that in the great cities there are feasts where food is piled high, where people eat until they are sick and then eat some more. You cannot imagine such a thing. Here, in the village, food is always scarce. You eat what you have and hope it will be enough to get you through the day. If it is not, you work anyway. As you eat, you watch a spider crawl across the floor. It pauses on a crumb of bread and then continues on its way, searching for something you cannot see. You almost envy it. At least the spider never worries about the miller's prices or about whether the harvest will be enough to keep everyone alive through the winter. Outside, you hear voices. The neighbors are already at it, arguing over who left the well uncovered, letting in mud and filth. The well itself is a disaster, half filled with leaves and the occasional dead frog, but it is the only source of water for the lower end of the village. Every few weeks, someone gets sick from it and dies quietly in their hut. You tell yourself it will not be you, not this time, but you drink the water all the same. You tear off another piece of bread, smaller this time, trying to make it last. You think about rationing, but you know that if you save it for later, someone will find it, or the rats will get to it first. Better to eat now and worry about tomorrow when it comes. There is a certain freedom in that. No plans, no expectations, just survival. You remember the stories your grandmother used to tell back when she was alive. She spoke of days when the village was prosperous, when there were chickens in every yard and honey on every table. You do not know if she was lying or simply remembering things as she wanted them to be. Maybe every generation believes the past was better, or maybe it is just that the future never gets any easier. Sometimes, when the hunger is especially bad, you wonder about the bread itself. Where did the flour come from? Did the miller cheat you again, taking a handful of grain for himself before grinding the rest into meal? You remember standing in line, waiting your turn, watching the master's servants carry away sacks of fine white flour, while you and the others made do with the gray, gritty remains. The bread you eat is always dense, always bitter, as if made from disappointment itself. Your meal is finished in minutes. You brush the crumbs from your lap, careful to gather any that might be large enough for a second taste. Waste not, want not, they say, though you suspect the ones who invented that phrase never had to eat bread like this. You lick your fingers, tasting salt and sweat and the faintest hint of mold. Breakfast is over. You are not full, not even close, but you are not empty either. That is the best you can hope for. Your stomach settles, grudgingly, and you take another swig of water, grimacing as you swallow. You set the bowl aside, knowing it will not be washed today. There is no time, and besides, it will only get dirty again by tomorrow. You stand up, joints stiff, mouth dry, and think about the day ahead. There will be work, endless and unforgiving. There will be splinters, bruises, cuts that do not heal. There will be moments of brief satisfaction when a beam fits just right or a nail drives true, but those moments are as fleeting as the last crumb of bread. Still, you have eaten. You are alive. That is enough for now. Outside, the sky is brighter. The gray of dawn gives way to the dull pewter of morning. You gather your tools, such as they are, and prepare to face another day, another 100,000 miseries and small victories in the life of a medieval carpenter. You reach for your clothes. Calling them that feels like an exaggeration. In truth, what you own are a collection of threadbare rags, patched and repatched so many times you suspect there is not a single scrap of the original cloth left. The tunic you pull over your head used to be brown, you think, though now it is a sort of indeterminate gray, stained with sweat, sawdust, pitch, and unidentifiable blotches of black and green. It sags at the shoulders and pinches beneath your arms. Its seams held together by the stubbornness of hope and a few desperate stitches. The material scratches your skin. You itch, always. Fleas nest in the seams, no matter how often you try to drown them in cold water. Sometimes, if you listen closely, you can hear them moving, your own private symphony of misery. Your grandmother once told you about fine linen shirts and woolen cloaks, about warm mittens and soft hats, all worn by rich townsfolk you will never meet. For you, comfort is a memory borrowed from other people's stories. Your trousers are not so much trousers as they are two legs worth of patches, each with a different origin story. This one from an old grain sack, that one from your mother's apron, another from a neighbor's cast off. They fit badly, cinched at the waist by a frayed leather belt you scavenged from a rubbish heap. The knees gape open like wounds, revealing the pale, bruised skin beneath. You have tried to mend them, but your needle is bent and the thread is always running out. Shoes? If only. In the best times, you might own a pair of wooden clogs, the kind that turn your feet into bludgeons and fill your socks with splinters. But your last pair rotted away in the spring rains. Now you go barefoot. Each step is an exercise in caution, avoiding stones and dung and the broken glass of someone else's misfortune. Your feet are hard and cracked, the soles black with mud and blood. In winter, you wrap them in rags and hope you will not lose any toes to the frost. You remember, not fondly, the sensation of new clothes, the way they chafed, the smell of unwashed wool. But that was years ago, before you outgrew everything and there was nothing left to pass down. Now you mend what you have. At night, by the dim light of a tallow candle, you squint and curse, trying to thread the needle through yet another worn patch. Sometimes you wonder if your entire life is just one long exercise in mending things that will never be whole. You tie a scrap of fabric around your head to keep your hair from falling in your eyes. It was once your father's, but he has been dead so long that you can barely remember the shape of his face, let alone how he wore his hair. Still, the gesture comforts you, a small act of defiance against the day's chaos. You tuck your hands into your sleeves and shiver. The village children sometimes mock you, pointing at your mismatched trousers and calling you scarecrow. You do not bother to answer. Their clothes are not much better, and in a few years they will look just like you, ragged, grimy, anonymous. Everyone here wears poverty like a second skin. The only ones who stand out are the occasional travelers, the rich merchants passing through, their cloaks trailing in the mud. You watch them with a mix of envy and suspicion, wondering how it feels to own something new. Even your cloak, your one defense against the wind and rain, is more holes than fabric. When it rains, you huddle beneath it, trying to imagine what it must be like to be dry. The water seeps through, icy fingers crawling down your spine. You remember a story about a king with a cloak so fine that rain slid right off it, but you know better than to hope for such magic. You try to keep your clothes clean, or at least less filthy. Once a week, you drag everything down to the river and beat it against a rock, hoping to drive out the worst of the dirt. Sometimes, if you are lucky, you find a sliver of lye soap to scrub at the stains, but the water is cold and your hands go numb, and when you are done, the clothes are never truly clean, just less dirty for a while. You dream sometimes of soft linen sheets, of warm wool blankets, of boots that fit and do not leak. But dreams are for children and fools. You settle for what you have, a tunic that covers your back, trousers that keep the wind off your knees, and a rag for your head. You make a mental note to search the refuse pile behind the tavern for any discarded cloth. Sometimes the drunks lose scarves or aprons, and a single strip of fabric can mean the difference between comfort and misery. You stand in front of the crooked bit of polished metal you use as a mirror. The reflection is a stranger, hollow cheeks, tangled hair, eyes rimmed with fatigue. You do not look for long. There is work to be done, and standing around is a luxury you cannot afford. With a sigh, you step out into the street, your patched and ragged clothing flapping around you like a flag of defeat. You join the procession of the tired and hungry, each wrapped in their own shroud of poverty, trudging through another gray morning. You remind yourself, not for the last time, that so long as you have clothes on your back, no matter how worn or filthy, you are luckier than some. You step back inside your hut and look at your tools spread out on the rough shelf and the dirt floor beneath it. These are not the shining, precise instruments pictured in illuminated manuscripts, nor the beautiful, balanced tools you have heard rich craftsmen brag about at the market. No, your tools are battered, crude, heavy, every edge blunted by years of use, every handle splintered, wrapped with scraps of leather or cord to keep them from splitting apart in your hands. There is your axe, chipped and blackened, the head that always threatening to fly off the handle if you swing too hard. You keep it bound with a strip of hide and pray it holds, because you cannot afford another. Your saw is missing half its teeth. You file what remains with a bit of rough stone, knowing full well it will never cut cleanly again. Still, it is better than nothing. Most men you know make do with less. Your chisel is a sorry thing, the blade nicked and bent from years of hacking at knots and nails. Sometimes you heat it in the coals and try to hammer it straight, but that only seems to make it worse. You take a perverse pride in your hammer, the only tool that has not failed you yet. It was your fathers before you, and his fathers before him, a relic of better days, if such days ever existed. The handle is worn smooth where countless hands have held it, the head heavy and solid. You keep it wrapped in cloth, hidden at night, because you have heard stories of neighbors stealing hammers while men sleep. Without a hammer, a carpenter is just another laborer, and you will cling to this last bit of dignity as long as you can. All of your tools bear your marks, little notches and carvings you made as a boy, desperate to make them your own. Sometimes, late at night, you run your fingers over these marks, trying to remember what hope felt like. But morning always comes, and the world reminds you that tools are not treasures, but burdens, heavy things that wear you down day by day until you and they are equally battered. The care of your tools is another endless chore. After a long day, when your arms ache and your back threatens to snap, you still must scrape the pitch from your saw, wipe the rust from your axe, sharpen the chisel, oil the hammer. There is never enough oil, of course, so you spit on a rag and make do, feeling the guilt rise inside you as the wood dries and cracks. The tools demand care, and you give it, even if it means neglecting yourself. You think about the cost of tools. They are dear, so expensive that a new axe or saw would cost you more than a month's labor, and even then, the blacksmith might cheat you with poor metal. Most men inherit their tools or trade favors for them. A few, the luckiest, receive them as gifts from generous masters, but you know better than to expect charity. You remember how you bartered half a sack of barley and 2 days' labor for a file, only to find the file already dulled by misuse. Every tool has a history. Your chisel was once a knife, ground down and repurposed when the blade broke. Your level is just a bit of string and a pebble, but it serves. Nails are precious, hammered straight and reused again and again until they snap. Glue is a luxury. Mostly, you make do with pegs and notches, learning to fit wood together with the patience of a monk copying scripture. You have seen, in the hands of the master carpenter, real tools, shining, sharp, balanced, beautiful. You once held his plane, a rare thing, imported from the city. It slid across the wood like a bird in flight, shaving off curls so fine they floated on the air. For a moment, You imagined what it would be like to work with such a tool to make something truly smooth, truly perfect. Then the master snatched it back and sent you to sweep the floor. The memory stings. You wonder if you will ever own a tool like that, but you know the answer. For men like you, tools are not symbols of pride, but reminders of your place. You work with what you have, and if your work is rough, it is only because the world made it so. You become adept at hiding flaws, filling cracks with sawdust, covering rough joints with pitch. You learn to lower your standards until the tools you possess are good enough. Each tool is a gamble. Will the saw break? Will the axe split? If it does, your week or your season is ruined. You imagine what would happen if you lost your hammer. How long would you last? Not long, you suspect. Tools are life. Without them, you are nothing. The irony is not lost on you. These objects, supposed to be your allies, are as much a source of anxiety as they are of hope. They tie you to your trade, your poverty, your limitations. Every morning, you check them with the care of a miser, whispering curses and prayers in equal measure. Before you leave your hut, you gather them together: axe, saw, chisel, hammer, and a pouch of nails, each one bent but serviceable. You cradle them in your arms like a mother would a child. They are heavy, awkward, and vital. As you step out into the gray morning, you feel the weight settle into your bones, a familiar ache. You are not just a man, you are an extension of your tools, and they of you. Together, you march toward another day of splinters, blisters, sweat, and sawdust. If you are careful and just a little lucky, they will serve you for one more day. If not, well, there is always the hope that tomorrow will be better. But you know, deep down, that hope is the most fragile tool of all. Your tools in hand, you trudge across the mud-slick lane toward the master carpenter's workshop. Calling it the master's is more habit than fact. You do most of the work that matters, and he knows it, but this is the way things are and always have been. Hierarchy is as fixed as the seasons. The master is not old. He is maybe 30 or 35, though the lines on his face make him look twice that. But you are younger, with the kind of youth that vanishes quickly under the hammer of work and worry. He is waiting for you, as always, already muttering under his breath about lazy apprentices, useless helpers, and how nothing is ever done right unless he does it himself. You could recite his morning tirade by heart, each complaint as familiar as the sound of rain on your roof. You're late. You are not. You cut that beam too short yesterday. You did not. Where's my plane? He lost it himself, but will blame you anyway. This ritual is as fixed as the sunrise. The master's clothes are no cleaner than yours, but somehow he wears them with more authority. His tunic is patched, his boots cracked, but he has a leather apron, real leather, thick and scarred, something you have only dreamed of owning. He carries himself with the confidence of a man who knows he can shout you down in front of a customer, dock your pay, or send you home without dinner. You nod and mumble apologies, not because you feel sorry, but because the ritual demands it. Your relationship is one of dependence and resentment. You cannot work without his tools, his space, his rare bits of wisdom, but he cannot complete half his orders without your hands and your willingness to do the dirtiest jobs. When the work is done well, he takes the credit. When it goes wrong, it is always your fault. This, too, is tradition. He orders you about with an energy born of fear, fear that you might leave for another workshop, as if there are many to choose from, fear that you might become as skilled as he is, fear that one day you might be too sick or too broken to work, and he will have to train another hungry mouth. He never says this, of course. Instead, meded, he shouts, curses, throws tools, not his own, naturally, and swears the world is going to ruin because no one knows how to work anymore. Sometimes, when he is in a better mood, which is rare, he will show you a trick: how to set a mortise by eye, how to split a beam straight, how to judge the dryness of a plank by the sound it makes when you tap it. These are valuable lessons, passed down like family secrets, and you listen closely, storing them away against the day you might need them, perhaps in another village if you ever manage to escape. But most days are not like that. Most days, he keeps his knowledge to himself and assigns you the worst tasks: planting rough timbers until your arms ache, scraping bark in the cold, hauling planks across town for a customer who will try to short you a coin or two. When you ask for a break, he laughs and points at the sun. You think the sun rests, he says, as if you are not already half dead from exhaustion. You keep your mouth shut. You have seen what happens to those who answer back, sent packing with no pay, their place taken by the next desperate soul. Pay is another farce. You are promised a wage, enough to buy bread, a bit of meat if you are lucky, maybe a sliver of cheese at holiday times, but there is always something deducted. For the wood you split poorly, he says, for the nails you bent, for the glue you wasted. By week's end, you are left with barely enough to survive, but you dare not leave. Another workshop might pay less, or nothing at all, or turn you away for being disloyal. Loyalty is a one-way street in this world. Sometimes, when you are alone, you hear the other apprentices whispering. They dream of striking out on their own, becoming masters themselves. You almost envy their hope, but you have seen too many fail, too many wind up as day laborers or beggars, their hands crippled by work, their dreams eaten away by hunger and cold. The master keeps his house a little warmer than yours, his belly a little fuller, his boots a little less worn. But he is not so different from you. The shadow of poverty is always there, waiting to snatch everything away if he falters. Perhaps that is why he clings so tightly to his authority, why every mistake is a personal insult, every question a challenge. You remind yourself not to become like him, though you suspect it is inevitable if you live long enough. The worst part is the constant suspicion. Every tool you touch, every scrap of wood you carry, he watches you as if you might pocket it, run off, or ruin it through sheer stupidity. Trust is for fools, he once told you, and you see the truth of it every day. There are no friends here, only uneasy alliances held together by necessity. By the time the sun climbs above the rooftops, you are already tired, your ears ringing from his endless complaints, your spirit dulled by the knowledge that tomorrow will be exactly the same. Still, you pick up your tools, swallow your pride, and get to work. The master will never be satisfied. But if you are careful, if you keep your head down and your mouth shut, maybe, just maybe, you will get through another day with your hands and your dignity more or less intact. You squeeze through the low, warped doorway into the master's workshop. The space is little more than a shed, four walls, a sagging roof, and a single window, grimy with soot, that lets in as much cold as light. The floor is a mosaic of dirt, sawdust, old wood shavings, the remains of 100 splintered boards, and the occasional dark patch where someone bled or spilled pitch. There is a smell here, thick and inescapable, made up of sour sweat, rotting wood, and old beer. It clings to your clothes and hair, to your very skin, until you are sure you will never be rid of it. The workbenches, such as they are rough planks balanced on stumps and crates, their surfaces deeply scarred and sticky with centuries of use. Nails and splinters lurk everywhere, ready to rip flesh from your hands or tear your trousers at the slightest misstep. You learn quickly never to place your bare hand anywhere without looking first. Under the benches, rats make their nests in the piles of offcuts and scraps, bold enough to dart out even when men are at work. You have heard the stories of men losing toes, or worse, to a hungry rat in the night. You believe them. There is no organization to the chaos, only a kind of desperate system. The most used tools within reach of the master, the rest scattered in the corners or tucked into pockets and belts. Every day starts with a search. Where is the good chisel, the mallet, the one unbent nail? You are blamed when something goes missing, even though the master is twice as likely to misplace it himself. Sunlight, when it comes, slants through the dusty air and catches motes of sawdust, making them glow like tiny stars before they settle in your lungs. You cough, a deep, rattling sound, the sort that never really goes away. At the end of every day, you blow brown dust from your nose and spit it out onto the floor where it mingles with the rest. The air is always damp or always too dry, never comfortable. In winter, your breath freezes in the air, your hands go numb, and your tools stick to your skin. In summer, the heat bakes the workshop until the pitch sweats from the beams and trickles down the walls, and you dream of water you cannot have. There is no relief, only different forms of discomfort. The dangers here are endless and creative. The axe head, loose again, could fly off and split someone's skull. The saw, already missing half its teeth, bites back if you lose focus for a moment, leaving ragged wounds. The workbench itself is an enemy. Lean on it too hard and it might tip, sending a cascade of tools, wood, and shame to the floor. You learn, early and well, to move slowly and deliberately, not out of laziness, but out of survival. You remember when you first started working here? The master barked at you to stop whining, boy, and watch your fingers. On the first day, you sliced open your thumb with a dull chisel. The blood pooled on the floor, and the master only muttered about staining good wood. There was no bandage, just a dirty rag tied tight, and you went back to work, dizzy from pain and loss. That was the first lesson. Your body is expendable, the work is not. Lunch, when it comes, is eaten standing up, hunched over the bench, crumbs falling into the sawdust. There is nowhere clean to sit, nothing soft to rest upon. If you are lucky, there is a crust of bread or a bit of hard cheese. The master's dog, a mangy beast with a perpetual limp, prowls beneath the benches, ready to snap up any scrap you drop. You are not above fighting the dog for food, and it is not above snapping at your fingers. In the dim light, you see your own hands, perpetually grimy, nails black with filth, the skin rough and peeling. Blisters never truly heal. They are replaced by calluses, then by cracks that split and bleed. Every cut, every splinter is a new opportunity for infection. You know the stories of men who lost arms, even lives, to festering wounds. You try not to think about it as you dig out another sliver of wood with a dirty knife, wincing as pus oozes from the skin. The noise is constant and numbing, hammers pounding, saws screeching, the master's endless tirade of curses and complaints. Your head rings with it, a ceaseless background to every thought. At times, you almost wish for silence, but you know that silence in the workshop means something has gone wrong, an accident, a collapse, a tool broken beyond repair. You work with others, apprentices, helpers, sometimes even the master's own family. Each is as tired and dirty as you are, none any better off. There is camaraderie here of a sort, the sharing of curses, the swapping of pain, the grudging respect for someone who can drive a nail straight in the dark or plane a beam with a single smooth stroke. You all know you are replaceable. You all work as if your lives depend on it, because in a way, they do. By late afternoon, your arms ache, your shoulders throb, your back feels as if it will never straighten again. The light fades, but the work does not end. The master insists on finishing the day's task, no matter how late, no matter how dark. Sometimes you work by candle or tallow lamp, squinting through the gloom until your eyes water and burn. You worry about setting fire to the shavings piled knee-deep on the floor, but you say nothing. A fire would be the end of everything, and you have nowhere else to go. When the day finally ends, you stumble out into the night, every inch of you furrowed in dust and sweat. You smell of wood, pitch, blood, and fear. You drag yourself home, already dreading the next morning, already feeling tomorrow's aches. There is no pride in the workshop, only survival. You endure because you must, because there are no other choices. You sleep fitfully, dreaming of accidents that never quite kill you, of a workshop clean and bright and silent. But dawn always comes, and with it another day in the cramped, filthy, dangerous workshop, a place that feels, for better or worse, like the only world you will ever know. You could almost forget, amid the shouting and the grime, that your entire existence revolves around wood. It is everywhere in your world: walls, roofs, carts, doors, coffins, and most crucially, your work. But wood is not some obedient servant. It is capricious, as likely to betray you as to yield to your hands. Every morning, you are reminded that your livelihood is made from a material that barely wants to cooperate. The search for suitable timber is a daily trial. The best trees are long gone, felled decades ago, and carted off to build the manor or the church. What remains is the dregs: crooked saplings, half rotted trunks, knotty branches that will warp at the first hint of moisture. You trudge out before dawn, sometimes with a cart, sometimes with just your arms and your battered axe. Every stick of timber you find is hard won, scavenged from hedgerows, claimed from fallen trees, or, if you are desperate, stolen from the edge of someone else's lot. The forest itself is a perilous place, overgrown, thick with brambles, crawling with ticks and biting flies, watched over by the estate's men at arms, who are always eager to catch a peasant poaching wood. Once you haul your prize back, your back already screaming from the effort, you have to judge whether it is any good. You tap the trunk, listening for the hollow knock that means rot inside. You cut into the bark, looking for insect tracks, holes, the telltale crumble of wood that has been eaten from within. Most of what you find is only barely usable, but you cannot afford to be choosy. Every piece must be used, one way or another. Splitting wood is its own torment. The axe, dull and unbalanced, sticks in the grain. Sometimes you swing for what feels like hours before a stubborn log cracks apart with a noise like a curse. If you are careless, a splinter drives deep into your palm, or worse, flies up and strikes your eye. You have seen men lose sight, or at least a week's work, for want of a careful swing. Every blow must be measured. Every day your hands bleed. The cold does not help, nor the rain, nor the biting wind that howls through the yard, rattling the piles of wood you have so painstakingly gathered. The worst, though, is when the wood betrays you. You cut a beam, measure it thrice, chisel the joints, and then, just as you fit it in place, you see the crack, the hidden flaw. Sometimes you can patch it, hide the gap with pitch or sawdust, but the master will find it. Lazy, he shouts. Stupid, you take the blame, though the fault was buried in the tree itself long before you laid hands on it. Wood is a living thing, even after it is dead. It warps as it dries, twisting out of shape, pulling nails loose and splitting at the ends. You have seen whole days' work ruined overnight by an unexpected rainstorm, the water seeping into the grain, undoing hours of labor in a heartbeat. Sometimes a board will look perfect, straight and true, and then, overnight, it bows or splits, and you start all over again. There is a lesson in this, you suppose, about not trusting appearances, but mostly it just feels like another petty cruelty. Then there are the pests: woodworm, beetles, even the occasional colony of ants. They tunnel through beams, leaving them riddled with holes and ready to snap at the worst possible moment. You bang on planks before using them. Listen for the hollow rattle that means insects are inside, but there is only so much you can do. The master blames you for every flaw, every failure, but he knows as well as you do that the world is simply stacked against you. Every scrap of wood is precious, even the offcuts. You hoard shavings for kindling, gather splinters for patching holes, collect sawdust for mixing with pitch. Waste nothing, you remind yourself, though some days it seems you waste only your energy. The best wood is reserved for the master's special orders. New doors for the church, a chest for a wealthy widow, a new wagon wheel for the merchant who can actually pay. You, meanwhile, work with the leftovers, the crooked bits, the gnarled branches, the scraps that no one else wants. Still, you take a certain pride in making something from nothing. A straight beam, carved from a warped log, is a minor miracle. A stool that does not wobble is a cause for celebration. Sometimes, rarely, you get to work with good wood, oak, ash, chestnut, and for a moment, you remember what it feels like to shape something that responds to your tools, to your hands, as if it wants to be made. But those moments are few, and the work is never easy. Your hands are always sticky with sap, your arms always aching from splitting, sawing, hauling. Your nails are black with dirt, your skin full of splinters and scars. You cough up sawdust at night, rub resin from your eyelids in the morning. The wood shapes you as much as you shape it, bending your back, roughening your skin, teaching you patience and humility with every stubborn knot and hidden flaw. And yet, every morning, you go out in search of more, because you must, because wood, for all its faults, is the only thing that stands between you and the elements, you and starvation, you and the slow decay that claims everything and everyone in the end. You wonder sometimes if anyone will ever look at your work and think of the struggle that went into it, the aches, the risks, the days lost to bad timber and bad luck. You doubt it, but you know, and the wood knows, and that will have to be enough. You might think, as a visitor from another world or another time, that a carpenter's day has a start and a finish. But here, in your life, the days blend together, one into the next, without a true beginning or end. Work is not just something you do, it is the very air you breathe, the water you drink, the thing that keeps you upright, and the thing that will someday break you. You begin before the sun. In winter, you dress and gather your tools by the gray light of a tallow candle, careful not to waste what little fat you have left. In summer, you move by dawn's first glow, already sweating as you haul wood and tools outside. The village stirs slowly, but you have no such luxury. The master expects to find you busy when he arrives, and the last thing you want is to be caught idle. There are rumors of other carpenters, ones who lost their place for a single yawn or a moment spent warming their hands by the fire. The first hours are always hardest. Your body aches from yesterday's labor, from 1,000 days' labor, and yet the tasks do not change. You carry beams, heavy and awkward, across courtyards slick with mud or rutted with frozen tracks. You heave logs onto crude sawhorses, muscles protesting, breath turning to clouds in the cold air. If you are unlucky, you do this alone. If you are luckier, a fellow apprentice helps, though that usually means competing for the master's rare praise and frequent scorn. The work is repetitive, but never easy. You saw, you chisel, you hammer over and over until your hands go numb or your grip slips and you send a tool clattering to the floor. The master's voice is always nearby, booming out orders, complaints, warnings. There is no room for error. A single misplaced cut, a beam too short or too thin, and the job must be started again. The wasted wood is your problem. The wasted time is the master's problem, and he does not let you forget it. You have no clock, no way to mark the hours, except by the sun's journey across the tiny, filthy window. Sometimes you feel as if the day will never end, that you will be trapped forever in this endless loop of hammer and saw. Time becomes elastic. A single hour can stretch into eternity if your stomach is empty, or if your hands are raw from cold, or if the master is in one of his foul moods. There are breaks of a sort, but they are never long. You snatch bites of food between tasks, a crust of bread here, a swallow of water there. You eat standing up, or crouched in a corner, careful not to get sawdust in your mouth. If you are caught resting, you pretend to be sharpening a tool, or straightening a bent nail, or sweeping the floor, though everyone knows these are only excuses for a moment's peace. As the day grinds onwards, your body becomes a thing of aches and bruises. Your fingers are covered in nicks, your knuckles swollen, your back a map of knots and pains. You learn to ignore it, or at least to push it aside, because there is always more to do. There are floors to lay, carts to mend, doors to fit, barrels to repair. Every task seems urgent, every order more important than the last, yet none of it ever seems to be enough. There is always another job waiting. The afternoon is worse, the light fades, the air turns colder, and your energy wanes. Still, you work. The master will not let you stop until every task is done, or more often, until the darkness makes it impossible to see. You squint by candle or lamp, shadows dancing on the walls, your eyes stinging with exhaustion. More than once, you have driven a nail into your own finger or cut yourself because your hands would not obey your tired mind. When it rains, the workshop becomes a swamp. Water drips from the roof, soaks into your clothes, turns the sawdust underfoot into a foul, clinging paste. When it is dry, the dust fills the air, coats your tongue, scratches your throat until every breath is a cough. There is no comfort, no relief. Summer or winter, wet or dry, the work never changes. You might pause for a festival or a holy day, but even then, you often find yourself patching a roof or building a stall for someone richer than you. Sometimes the work continues long into the night. A wealthy customer wants his order finished before the market, or the master accepts a job too big for your tired crew. You labor by the light of a smoky lamp, shadows looming, your mind drifting with fatigue. The world shrinks to the circle of yellow light and the scrape of your tools. Outside, the village grows quiet. Inside, the only sound is your breathing and the relentless, inescapable work. At last, the master calls an end. He counts the finished pieces, frowns at the crooked ones, reminds you that your wages depend on quality, not just quantity. You are too tired to care. You gather your tools, wipe them as best you can, and store them where you hope they will not be stolen in the night. Your arms tremble as you lift the last plank. Your back threatens mutiny as you straighten. You stagger home through streets empty except for stray dogs and rats. The world is silent now, except for the ringing in your ears. You pass other workers, faces hollow and pale, each moving through their own private hell of exhaustion and hunger. Back in your hut, you collapse onto your straw mat, too tired to wash, too tired to eat, too tired even to curse your fate. Your sleep is dreamless or filled with dreams of endless work. Another day, another beam, another nail, and when the morning comes, you will rise again, because there is no choice. The workday never truly ends. It only pauses, waiting for you to begin again, as if the endless toil and unyielding wood were not enough. There is another trial to face each day. Your customers. They are the lifeblood of your trade, and at the same time, the leeches draining what little hope you have left. There is no pleasure in serving them, only the knowledge that if you do not, you will not eat. They come in all forms: fellow villagers, local traders, visiting merchants, the odd noble's servant, and, on rare, unlucky days, the master's own creditors or rivals, their faces sharp and eyes hungry for fault. It begins with the knock, the one you learn to dread. A fist on the workshop door, a barked name, or worse, a polite, measured tap, the kind that means trouble. The master shoves you forward, puts on a grimace he thinks is a smile, and greets the customer as if they are an honored guest. For your part, you bow your head, hands sticky with glue or dust, eyes fixed to the ground. You try to look eager, but not desperate, capable, but not too proud. The conversations are always the same, a tiresome ritual as predictable as the sunrise. The customer produces a request: a new table, a sturdy stool, a door that does not groan like a dying ox every time it moves. Sometimes it is something grander: an ornate chest for a merchant's daughter, a cradle for a woman heavy with her first child. They always want more than they can chew for, and they always expect miracles. We want it strong, good oak, mind you, and the hinges must not rust. And can you carve our family's crest into the lid? The words tumble out, demands piling on one another, a mountain of expectation built on a foundation of copper pennies. You nod, you scribble a few notes, you let the master do the haggling. You already know the outcome: too much work, too little pay, and, if you are lucky, half the promised coin delivered when the work is done. The rest, I'll settle up next week, you have my word. Their word, in your experience, is worth less than a bent nail. Worse are the neighbors, the ones who think that sharing a roof with you at a festival entitles them to endless credit and special favors. We're friends, are we not? Surely you can knock a little off the price. The last carpenter only charged me half as much. You want to scream that the last carpenter is dead, or has run away, or is begging in the next town. Instead, you nod and agree, because the alternative is no work at all. Some customers are more cunning, arriving when the master is away, hoping to strike a bargain with you alone. You know how it is. He charges too much. Slip me a little extra, or use the good wood, and I'll see you right. You have learned the hard way to refuse such deals. The master always finds out, and the punishment is swift and severe. You cannot afford to be caught between the master's anger and the customer's cheap promises. There is a hierarchy to humiliation. The poorest pay the least and demand the most. The richer folk, merchants, a minor priest or two, barely look at you, handing orders to the master as if you were invisible. You do not exist for them, not as a person. At best, you are a pair of hands. At worst, an obstacle to be avoided. If a mistake is found, if a table wobbles or a chest is less than perfect, the blame is yours, even if you never touched the piece in question. You apologize, you listen to the complaints, you swallow the insults like a second breakfast. Then there are the disputes, which are as regular as the seasons. This is not the wood I ordered. The legs are uneven. The joints creak. Did you not understand my instructions? There is no pleasing some customers, and you suspect that some are disappointed on principle, convinced that the world is out to cheat them, and you are merely its agent. The master fawns, promises to fix everything, and then takes it out of your hide, deducted from your pay, added to your chores, counted as yet another mark against your already tarnished record. Sometimes, just sometimes, a customer is honest. An old woman who brings eggs as payment, a farmer who stays to help you lift a heavy beam. You treasure these moments, rare as they are, reminders that not everyone is out to wring the last drop of sweat and dignity from you. But even these exchanges are tinged with hardship. You know they are giving you the best they have, and you know it is still not enough. You become an expert in reading faces, who might pay in full, who will haggle to the last farthing, who is lying about their ability to pay, and who will try to disappear when the time comes to settle the bill. You learn to spot the glint of greed, the curl of the lip that means they are about to find fault, the quick glance at the door that means they are planning to leave without paying at all. On the worst days, the master brings you along to deliver a finished piece. You heave a heavy chest or a door across the muddy streets, only to be met with a frown, a purse of lips, a slow shake of the head. Not quite what I had in mind. Perhaps if you lower the price, I could take it off your hands. Otherwise, you can bring it back next week and try again. You want to throw the chest into the street, to shout that you have done your best, but instead you nod and haul the thing back, shoulders aching, head down. There are days when you wonder if the customers hate you or if they even think about you at all. You suspect not. For most of them, you are as much a part of the landscape as the mud on their boots or the smoke from the chimneys, unnoticed, unloved, and entirely replaceable. When the day is over and the workshop is silent, you remember the faces, the words, the coins that never quite make their way into your hand. You tell yourself that tomorrow will be different, but you know better. Tomorrow will bring more customers, more complaints, more empty promises. All you can do is endure. It is, after all, what you have always done. You do not remember the last day you worked without pain. Perhaps you never have. The wounds come so often, in so many forms, that pain itself becomes the measure of your life. A sharp cut here, a deep bruise there, a tooth that aches until you can think of nothing else. Your hands are a map of old scars, the skin thickened and lumpy, where splinters once burrowed in and festered. Sometimes you press your thumb against a finger and watch pus ooze from a fresh infection. You do not flinch. This is simply your reality. There are the obvious injuries, the hammer that slips and crushes your knuckles, the saw that bites into your flesh, the chisel that glances off wood and carves a bloody line up your palm. Each time you swear at yourself, at your luck, at the world that makes such accidents inevitable. If the master is nearby, he calls you a fool and threatens to dock your wages. If not, you bind the wound with a strip of filthy cloth torn from your shirt, grit your teeth, and keep working. There is no time to rest, no allowance for weakness. Splinters are the least of your worries, though they torment you daily. Some are easy to pluck out with a pin or the edge of your knife, but others dig deep, invisible, stubborn. You watch the skin around them swell and redden, then split and ooze. Infection is always waiting, a patient hunter. You have seen men lose fingers, even hands, to wounds that began as nothing more than a sliver of wood. There are worse things too. In winter, the cold cracks your skin until it bleeds. In summer, the sweat seeps into every scratch, turning minor wounds into festering sores. You try to wash, sometimes, in the icy river, but the water is as dirty as you are, and you cannot spare the time or firewood for a proper bath. You have heard that in the city, rich folk pay money for hot baths and gentle hands to clean their wounds. Here, your only doctor is time, and sometimes time is the enemy. Illness is as common as dirt. Coughs linger for months, turning into deep, rattling things that shake your whole body. Fever comes and goes, leaving you weak and drenched in sweat, too tired to stand, too frightened to rest. You know the signs: the red streak crawling up a limb, the sudden swelling of a joint, the foul smell of rot. You have seen men's arms turn black and hard as wood, have watched friends and neighbors die slow, painful deaths from wounds that would be nothing in another world. There are no doctors here. The village has an old woman who knows a few herbs, a man who claims to have learned something from a wandering friar, but mostly you are on your own. Sometimes a wound heals. More often, it does not. When infection sets in, you try every remedy you know, chewing bark, rubbing ashes into the cut, even burning it with a hot knife. The pain is blinding, but it is better than the alternative. You have heard tales of barber surgeons in the town, men with saws and knives who cut away the rot and hope for the best. You know what they charge, though, more than you will ever have. A coin for every stitch, a day's pay for a jar of ointment. Even if you could scrape together the money, the journey itself would likely kill you. Toothaches are a special torment. There is nothing to be done but endure. You press a clove or a splinter of wood into the cavity and pray for the pain to end. When it does, it is because the tooth has rotted away or fallen out, leaving a ragged hole in your jaw. The old men in the village have mouths like ruined fences, gaps and black stubs, every one a monument to years of pain. Then there are the fevers. You wake one morning drenched in sweat, your head splitting, your limbs too heavy to lift. You shiver and burn at the same time. The master scowls and tells you to work through it. If you cannot, you are left to rot in your hut, your food running out, the world moving on without you. Some recover, most do not. When the coughing gets too loud, too wet, you are shunned. Nobody wants what you have, even if nobody knows what it is. Death, when it comes, is rarely quick. You have seen it up close, seen men go from strong to wasted in a handful of days. Their breath rattles, their eyes turn glassy, their bodies curl in on themselves. Sometimes you think that if you had the money, or if you lived somewhere else, things might be different. But here, wounds are just part of life, and death is never far away. What frightens you most is how quickly people forget. One day you are working side by side with a neighbor, sharing bread and stories. The next, his tools are being divided up, his hut already home to someone else. There are no graves with headstones, no mourners in black, just a hurried burial in a shallow pit and a new face in the workshop by week's end. You check your wounds each night, hopeful that they are closing, not spreading. You whisper a prayer to saints you do not really believe in, asking for another day without fever, another night without pain. You know you cannot avoid sickness forever, that someday the wrong splinter, the wrong cough, the wrong bit of rotten meat will be the end of you. Until then, you endure. There is no other choice. In the world of the medieval carpenter, pain is your constant companion, injury your shadow, and death the neighbor you greet with grim familiarity. You live not because you are strong or lucky, but because you have not yet been chosen for suffering worse than what you can bear. Every day you open your eyes, you count as a small victory, a delay perhaps, but never a reprieve. Just as you begin to think your hardships might be manageable, that you might eke out a small margin from your endless labor, another shadow falls over your life: the authority. Taxes and dues, rents and fines, the obligations never end, and you always owe more than you can possibly pay. It is as constant as the sunrise, and twice as unwelcome. You never quite know when the tax collector will arrive, but you always feel him coming. There is a shift in the air, a certain tension in the streets, the way people suddenly remember chores elsewhere. His arrival is not grand. He is not a noble, just a petty official, usually with a guard or two for company, both of them as eager for a cut as their master. They stride through the village, faces twisted in perpetual suspicion, poking their noses into every hut, every shed, every corner where a stray coin or loaf of bread might be hidden. There is no dignity in this. The collector raps at your door, or sometimes does not bother, pushing inside as if he owns the very air you breathe. You stand, cap in hand, eyes on the floor, heart pounding in your chest as he recites the latest list of dues: the tithe for the church, the levy for the Lord, the market fee, the tax for using the mill, the toll for the road, and if you have done a little better than usual, a special assessment for the new bridge or the repairs to the town gate. Each sum is small by itself, but together they are a mountain you cannot hope to climb. Do not look so sour, the collector says, counting your pennies as if he expects them to multiply in his palm. The king's peace does not come cheap. You would not want the roads to fall into ruin, would you? Or the bandits to run wild? You have never seen a king's soldier, except when they come to collect, and the only bandits you know are the ones wearing badges. Sometimes you try to argue, to explain that you have barely scraped by, that your last job fell through, that the crops failed, or a storm tore the roof from your hut. The collector is unmoved. No one escapes the king's justice, he says. Pay what you owe, or pay with your skin. If you are lucky, he will only threaten. If not, you might find yourself dragged before the reeve, your tools confiscated, your meager goods seized to settle your debt. You have seen neighbors hauled off to the stocks, whipped or locked in a stinking cell. You have seen families thrown out of their homes for a handful of coins. The master fares little better. His debts are larger, his bribes more expensive. He curses the authorities behind closed doors, then scrapes together every last farthing when they come, fearful of losing his workshop, his tools, his standing in the guild. The richer villagers manage a little better, slipping coins to the right hands, making quiet deals in the night. You, meanwhile, must simply hope that you will not be noticed. There are other forms of authority, each with its own demands. The church insists on its tithe, the 10th part of whatever you earn, if not in money, then in bread, in wood, in labor. The priest appears at your door, gentle smile fixed in place, reminding you of your duty to God and your fellow man. He does not leave until you have given something, even if it is the last loaf on your shelf or the last coin in your purse. You want to refuse, to ask where God was when you split your hand open on a nail, but you hold your tongue. Then there are the laws, which seem to multiply every year. New rules about what wood can be cut, what goods can be sold, what markets you can use. Break a rule and you pay a fine. Break it twice and you might lose your freedom altogether. The Lord's men patrol the roads, eyes always searching for a reason to stop you, to search your cart, to claim a share of whatever you carry. You become clever at hiding things. An extra handful of nails tucked in your shoe, a sliver of cheese beneath a floorboard, a coin buried in the straw. But the collectors are cleverer. They know every trick, and they delight in catching you out. Each time they find something, the punishment grows worse. Sometimes the tax collector brings news of war, a new levy to pay for armor and swords, a draft for the village's young men. You have no choice but to pay, to give up your sons, your brothers, your friends. Most never return, and those who do come back changed, hollow eyed, and bitter. Still, the demands never cease. At the end of each visit, you are left poorer, angrier, and more afraid. You wonder how anyone is meant to survive, how you are supposed to work and feed yourself and pay for the privilege of living on land you will never own. There is no answer. You count your remaining coins, whisper a curse you dare not say aloud, and start again. Another week, another round of demands, another visit from the men who hold your life in their hands. The weight of taxes and authority is not just measured in money, it grinds you down, flattens your spirit, makes each day harder than the last. You grow careful, suspicious, always watching for the next hand to reach into your pocket. You learn not to hope, only to endure, and to keep your head down whenever power walks by. There is no shelter from these leeches, no mercy in the system. You survive not because of it, but in spite of it, day after day, year after year, until you become another nameless face. The collector no longer bothers to threaten. The world outside your hut does not care about your pain, your hunger, or your debts. It offers no comfort, no shelter, and certainly no mercy. The weather is another tyrant in your life, as fickle and cruel as any master or tax collector. There is no season when you can rest. There is only the endless grind, made worse by wind, rain, ice, or sun. Winter is the worst. Before the sun rises, you step into a world of biting cold, your breath billowing in front of your face, your fingers already numb. Your clothes, never quite dry, never quite warm, do little to protect you. The frost creeps up from the ground and settles into your bones. Every tool is hard and cold to the touch. You blow on your hands, flex your aching fingers, and hope you do not drop the hammer or chisel, because picking it up means plunging your hands back into the icy mud. The workshop is a trap for the cold, the walls sweating with condensation, the floor as hard as iron. The wood, too, seems to rebel against the cold, splintering and cracking with every blow. Sometimes, the water you need for glue or cleaning is frozen solid. You chip at it with a stick, waiting for the numbness in your hands to turn into pain, and then, if you are lucky, back into numbness again. You have seen men lose fingers to the frost, the tips turning black and falling away, bit by bit. At night, you curl into a tight ball, wishing for more rags or a scrap of fur, anything to keep the cold from stealing your sleep, and, eventually, your life. Spring brings mud and a different sort of misery. The roads become rivers of filth, sucking at your boots, if you have any, or else caking your bare feet with icy sludge. Everything is damp. The wood is slick and stubborn, your tools rusting overnight if you forget to wipe them. You drag yourself through each day, clothes heavy with water, every step a fight against the sucking ground. Summer should bring relief, but instead it brings heat that presses down like a hand on your neck. The workshop becomes an oven, filled with the stink of sweat and pitch. You work stripped to your shirt, the cloth stuck to your back, your face gritty with dust. The sun beats down, and in every task leaves you dizzy and parched. You crave water, but what you have is warm and foul, and you drink it anyway, because there is no choice. You know the danger: fever, heat stroke, the sickening weakness that comes before a collapse. The master shouts for you to work faster, but your arms feel made of lead and your head swims. Autumn is brief, and it is only a reminder that worse is coming. The air grows damp and chill. The wind brings leaves and dust, blowing through every crack in the walls. Rain falls without end, soaking everything, turning the workshop floor to a slippery morass. You slip and fall, bruising your knees, cursing as the mud creeps up your legs. The wood swells and shrinks, refusing to fit, forcing you to redo work you thought was finished. Illness follows the weather like a shadow. The cold brings coughs and aching bones. The heat brings rashes and infections. Rain brings mold, mildew, and rotting food. Some days you can barely stand, but you work anyway. There is no one to take your place, no one to cover for you. If you rest, you starve. The fatigue is constant, a fog that blurs the edges of every day. You forget when you last felt rested. Every morning, you rise with a groan, muscles stiff, back screaming in protest. You stumble to your feet, eyes heavy, head aching, and tell yourself to keep moving. There is no cure for this exhaustion. It is simply the cost of being alive. You watch the older workers, bent and broken, and wonder if you will make it that far, or if you will collapse in the mud one day, another body for the priest to bury in a shallow, forgotten grave. There are moments when you long for just a few hours out of the weather, a warm bed, a dry shirt, a cup of clean water. But these are dreams, not reality. The village has no comfort to offer you. The master's fire is for him alone, the best of everything reserved for those who pay or command. You huddle in a corner of the workshop or under an overhang, knees pulled to your chest, and wait for the rain to stop or the sun to sink low enough that you can stagger home. The work does not stop for the weather, and neither do the demands. If the wind howls or the rain floods the road, you are still expected to deliver, to repair, to build. Your body is nothing but another tool, one that must be used and used up before it can be discarded. By the end of each day, the fatigue seeps deeper than your bones. You feel it in your soul, a weight you cannot shed, no matter how you sleep or how long you rest. You dream of warmth, of cool breezes, of a day without pain or fear. But the dawn always comes, and with it the same world, cold, hot, wet, dry, always demanding, always indifferent to your suffering. You do not hope for comfort anymore. You only hope to endure, to make it through another day, another season, another year, until the weather or the work, or both, finally finish what hunger and hardship have begun. If someone from another world were to ask you about food, they might imagine warm, fragrant bread, hearty stews, and roast meat turning on a spit. You would laugh, if you still had the energy to laugh. For you, food is not pleasure. It is not comfort, nor variety, nor even certainty. It is simply another battle in the endless war of survival, a daily test of whether you will manage to fill your belly just enough to keep working, or whether gnawing hunger will rule your thoughts from dawn to dusk. Your diet is predictable and nearly always insufficient. On most days, you eat what you can beg, grow, or barter for, a thin porridge of barley or oats, if you are lucky. Yesterday's bread, if you are not. The bread, always gray and sour, is more stone than crumb by the second day, and hard enough to break your teeth by the third. You soak it in water to soften it, but this only brings out the flavor of mildew and, sometimes, the scuttling movement of insects. Vegetables are the mainstay of your existence, not the fresh, crisp greens that fill the market stalls in spring, but the tired, worm-eaten turnips, limp cabbage leaves, and onions with sprouting tops and blackened skins. You choke them down, your mouth full of bitterness and grit. In the lean months, you chew tough roots or the occasional handful of wild sorrel or nettles, stung lips, a small price for the faintest taste of green. Meat is a dream. Most weeks, you do not taste it at all. When you do, on holy days, at weddings or funerals, or after some animal has died and cannot be saved, you tear at the fatty scraps like a dog. More often than not, what little meat you get is bone and gristle, boiled for hours to coax out a thin broth, the few shreds of flesh doled out with the caution of a miser counting gold. The taste lingers in your memory for days, almost as strong as the hunger it cannot satisfy. The master eats better, of course. On rare occasions, he shares the drippings from his table, a wedge of stale cheese, a few scraps of cold meat, the tough heel of a loaf. You take what is offered, never daring to ask for more, never letting your eyes linger too long on what he keeps for himself. He watches you eat with a faint smirk, as if generosity itself is a luxury you must earn. You try to make your food last, but it always runs out before it should. Rats and mice get their share, slipping into your stores at night, gnawing through your sacks and leaving droppings in your flour. You set traps, curse the vermin, and curse your luck when you wake to find the last of your meal gone. If you complain, the neighbors only shrug. Everyone is in the same battle, and a hungry rat is as hard to defeat as a hungry taxman. Hunger shapes your days as much as any tool or task. It slows your hands, clouds your mind, makes you short-tempered and dull-eyed. You work slower, you make mistakes, you drop tools, and forget simple things. When your stomach clenches with emptiness, you would trade almost anything for a few bites more, and you are not above snatching at scraps when no one is looking. Pride has long since given way to necessity. There are times, of course, when fortune smiles, or, at least, does not scowl. The harvest might be good, or a neighbor might bring a basket of apples or a handful of eggs in exchange for mending a gate. These are the bright moments, and you savor them, hoarding crumbs and memories alike. For a brief while, you remember what it means to be full, to think of something other than the ache in your gut. But for every feast, there are 100 famines, a bad season, a spoiled harvest, a sick cow, a blight on the crops, or simply the arrival of another tax or fine. Any of these can turn your next meal into a question mark. You watch the children in the village grow thin and pale. You see old men's faces hollow out until their eyes seem too large for their skulls. You know that hunger does not kill quickly, but slowly, drawing out its punishment over weeks or months until work becomes impossible and you are left behind. You sometimes wonder about the stories you have heard, places where fish leap from the rivers, where bread is soft and white, where honey drips from the comb, and chickens lay eggs as large as apples. You have never seen such places. In your world, food is something to be measured, counted, guarded, and stretched as far as it will go. Every meal is a calculation, every crumb a victory. Even in times of plenty, you never forget to worry. You hide bits of food in secret places, wary of thieves, rats, or jealous neighbors. You barter for scraps of salt, knowing that a salted herring or chunk of bacon, carefully rationed, can make the difference between hunger and starvation in the lean months. But salt itself is dear, and you often go without, relying on luck and willpower to get you through another week. And yet, you endure. You always do. Your body grows lean, your mind sharp with the knowledge that tomorrow's meal is never promised. Hunger is not just an absence, it is a companion, a teacher, a tyrant, and sometimes, when you are lucky, a reminder that you are still alive. In the end, food is not about taste or pleasure. It is about survival, one mouthful at a time, one day at a time, until another season turns and the struggle begins again. When the long day finally sputters to an end, when the tools are wiped as best you can, and the last curse from the master has faded, you begin the slow shuffle home. Your body is heavy, leaden with exhaustion. Your feet drag through mud and filth, each step an act of will. The evening brings no promise of rest, only a change of scene, from one pit of labor to another pit of squalor. You enter your hut and, for a moment, stand in the doorway, letting your eyes adjust to the gloom. The air inside is thick, stale with the smell of old sweat, mildew, wet straw, and the faint, sickly sweet rot of yesterday's dinner scraped from a bowl and left for the rats. Your hands are stiff and caked with grime. You rub them on your tunic, adding another layer to the tapestry of stains before finally collapsing onto your straw mat. Cleanliness is not part of your world. There is no bath waiting, no steaming water poured by gentle hands. If you are determined, you might trudge to the water barrel or the nearby ditch, splash your face and arms with icy water, and scrub at your hands until the worst of the dirt is gone. The cold burns. Your fingernails stay black. The cracks in your skin sting, and the water brings no real relief. You towel off with a rag, already stiff with old dirt. Most days, you do not bother. What is the point? Tomorrow will make you filthy again. You strip off your tunic, shake out the sawdust and wood shavings, and hunt for lice. This is a daily ritual, a bitter, mindless contest between you and the tiny tormentors that live in your seams, your hair, your bedding. No matter how many you crush between your fingernails, you will never be free of them. You have heard that noblemen shave their heads and bathe in scented oils to avoid such things. You settle for scratching until you bleed and pray that you will not catch the fever that sometimes follows the bite. Food, if there is any, is eaten in silence. A crust of bread, a cup of cold water, a few spoonfuls of gray, lumpy pottage. You chew slowly, fighting the urge to eat too quickly and leave yourself hungry before sleep. You eye the scraps for mold or mouse droppings. Most nights you are too tired to care. You eat whatever is left, your stomach grumbling, and push the bowl away. There is nothing to do but sleep, and even this is hardly a comfort. The hut is cold, the mat lumpy and thin. The wind howls through gaps in the thatch. Rain drips onto your face or pools in the corners. In the summer, the hut is a stifling box, every surface sticky with sweat, every shadow hiding biting insects. In winter, the cold is an enemy, creeping through every stitch, gnawing at your bones. You curl yourself into a tight ball, wrap rags around your feet and shoulders, and shiver. You try not to think about the night, the sounds that fill the darkness, the creak of timbers settling, the scrabble of rats beneath your floor, the distant arguments and laughter of drunken neighbors, the sudden scream or wail that no one answers. Sometimes you hear footsteps outside your door, sometimes a dog howls, sometimes a voice mutters a prayer or a curse. You have learned not to rise, not to look, not to care. The night belongs to other miseries. Sleep comes in fits and starts. Your mind drifts in circles, the day's failures, the aches in your body, the worry of what tomorrow will bring. You wake often, sometimes because of pain in your back or shoulders, sometimes because of the cold, sometimes for no reason at all. Each time you listen to the silence, the rustle of rats in the straw, and try to convince yourself it is not yet morning. The night stretches out, both too long and never long enough. Dreams are no comfort. When they come, they are usually strange and bitter. Visions of endless work, broken tools, the master's angry face, or worse. Memories of times when life was easier, when you were a child and hunger and pain were things that belonged to other people. Sometimes you dream of running, and always ending up back in the same place, your hands empty, your heart pounding. You know better than to hope for a full night's rest. Even on the rare nights when you do sleep soundly, you wake before dawn, already tense, the first notes of the master's shouting echoing in your mind. The straw beneath you is damp, your limbs stiff, your mouth dry. You rise slowly, muscles burning, every joint a complaint. Another day begins, no different from the one before. You tell yourself that you are used to this, that everyone else endures the same. In a way, that is true. But the knowledge does not make the filth less filthy, or the exhaustion less heavy, or the sleep more restful. You endure because there is no other choice. You endure because to do otherwise would be to give in, to lie down and let the cold and the hunger and the darkness finish their slow work. The sun rises. You brush the lice from your shirt, wipe the crust from your eyes, and step out into the chill. The world waits. Another day, another round of labor, another evening just like this one, and the one after, and the one after that. Your hut is barely a wall away from the next, and that is both comfort and curse. Neighbors are always close in the village, close enough to hear their arguments, their snoring, their coughs and groans, and sometimes their quiet weeping at night. There is no such thing as privacy. Thin walls let in the cold, the noise, and all too often, the troubles of those around you. The neighbor on one side, old Tom, is a man of endless complaints. He curses his luck, his aching bones, and the youth of today, meaning by now everyone younger than 50. His voice carries through the walls as if the planks are not there at all, and you hear every argument with his wife, every time he stumbles over the firewood, every muttered prayer for an early death. Sometimes you envy his persistence. Other times you wish for earplugs, a luxury no one in the village has ever heard of. On the other side lives the widow Anne. She is thin as a rake and twice as sharp, with a nose for other people's business and a tongue like a whip. She knows everything: who is behind on their taxes, whose chicken went missing, who came home drunk, who is nursing a suspicious bruise. You do not mind her gossip when it is about someone else, but when her sharp gaze settles on your empty larder or your patched trousers, you wish you could disappear into the walls. Life in the village is communal by necessity. People borrow, barter, steal, and share in equal measure. A missing tool will turn up in a neighbor's shed, borrowed for just a moment. A missing meal might be repaid in labor, or more likely, never repaid at all. You learn to hide what little you have, not out of malice, but because there is never enough to go around. Trust is a valuable thing, easily lost and seldom regained. But the worst neighbors of all are the ones with fur and tails. Rats rule your nights. They are everywhere: in the straw, behind the walls, under the floor, chewing and gnawing at anything remotely edible. You hear their squeaks and scrabbling, their little wars fought over crumbs and moldy crusts. Sometimes they are bold enough to scamper across your chest as you sleep, their whiskers tickling your face, their sharp little teeth ready to test the boundaries between food and flesh. You set traps, though most are just scraps of wood and string. Sometimes you catch one and toss its tiny body into the ditch. But for every rat you kill, two more seem to take its place. They are as much a part of your life as hunger or cold. You curse them when they steal your last piece of bread, when they gnaw holes in your only shirt, when they bite through the rope that keeps your tools from wandering away. Their droppings are everywhere, and you know the stories of fevers and sickness carried on rats' backs, of whole families lost to a bite, or a cough. Still, there is nothing to be done. Rats are as inevitable as rain. The pests do not stop there. Fleas leap from every crack and seam, their bites raising red welts on your skin. Lice infest your scalp, your armpits, your groin, wherever the skin is softest and most vulnerable. You scratch until you bleed, knowing that to scratch is to risk infection, but you cannot help yourself. In summer, clouds of flies drift through the hut, settling on your food, your face, your wounds. At night, the mosquitoes find every exposed bit of skin, leaving you a map of bites by morning. Your neighbors fight the same battles, and sometimes you find camaraderie in your shared miseries. Anne shares her trick with vinegar and mint leaves for keeping lice at bay. It barely works, but you are grateful for the advice. Old Tom lends you his cat for a night, hoping it will thin the rat population, though the beast seems more interested in sleep than hunting. You help patch a neighbor's roof, and she gives you a wedge of cheese, thick with mold, but still edible. Survival is a group endeavor, a thousand small favors and grudges carried over from day to day. But just as often, your neighbors are your rivals. Food and firewood go missing, tools change hands in the night, accusations fly like sparks from a blacksmith's forge. You keep your head down, your eyes averted, hoping not to draw attention, not to become the subject of the next round of village gossip. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you do not. There is, in all of this, a strange comfort, a reminder that you are not alone in your struggle. Everyone suffers together, and in that shared suffering, there is a kind of solidarity. When the fevers come, when a roof collapses, when a child goes missing, the village pulls together. You give what little you can, and you receive in kind, though never as much as you need. But the pettiness, the noise, the theft, the constant scratching, the nighttime scurrying, it all wears on you. Each new day brings a new annoyance, a new reason to curse your fate. You remind yourself that things could be worse. You could be alone in the woods or lost in a city where no one knows your name. Here, at least, someone will notice if you do not wake up one morning. Here, someone might even mourn. So you put up with the neighbors, the rats, the lice, the gossip, and the theft. You grit your teeth, scratch your bites, and try not to let it drive you mad. After all, this is village life, messy, noisy, communal, and absolutely inescapable. Just one more misery to add to the growing pile. A few times a year, your life is interrupted by what the villagers call celebration. Feast days, saints' days, harvest festivals. The official calendar says these are moments of joy, meant to break the monotony, to offer a taste of pleasure and community. In truth, they are more like storms, noisy, chaotic, brief, and often destructive. On the morning of a festival, you notice the change in the air. The master barks fewer orders. Neighbors are less sullen, even if only by a hair. Someone is already drunk before the sun has climbed above the roofs. You hear laughter, loud, reckless, almost defiant. Today, for once, work is set aside or finished early, the tools stowed, the scraps of food brought out and displayed as if a feast is possible. There is food of a sort, not enough for everyone to feel full, but more than usual. A pot of watery stew with a bone in it, perhaps, or a loaf of fresh bread, rare as gold, broken and passed around. If someone has managed to catch a chicken or a hare, it is roasted over a smoky fire, filling the air with a scent that makes your mouth water and your stomach ache. You eat quickly, hungrily, and try not to think about how little there is to go around. The drink flows freely. Sour ale, thin wine, home-brewed spirits with a burn like fire and a taste that would make a city merchant faint. The drink is both a blessing and a curse. It dulls the pain, blurs the edges of hunger and fear, and for a few short hours lets you pretend that life is something other than endless misery. It loosens tongues and tempers alike. Arguments break out over old insults and unpaid debts. Songs rise, sometimes tuneful, more often ragged and desperate, lyrics half remembered and mostly obscene. Children, for once, have enough energy to play. They run wild through the village, dodging drunken adults, chasing each other with shrieks and laughter. For them, the festival is pure magic, the promise of sweets, a new game, a moment when even the harshest parents look away from the endless labor and smile. But the mood is always unstable, always balanced on a knife's edge. The drink makes some men belligerent, turns quiet neighbors into brawlers. Fights break out in the mud, fists and boots and curses flying. The master is quick to join in, eager to settle scores with rivals or apprentices who have long irritated him. You keep your head down, hoping to avoid notice, but even you are not immune. A careless word, a wrong glance, and you are pulled into the chaos. The local priest wanders among the crowd, doing his best to keep order, to remind everyone of God's watchful eye. Few pay attention. The priest's voice is lost in the clamor, and even he seems tempted by the ale and laughter. By evening, someone is always bleeding, someone is always missing a shoe, and someone, more than one, sometimes, has been hauled away to spend the night, sobering up in the stocks or locked in the churchyard shed. You cannot remember a single festival that did not end in disaster for someone. A broken arm, a stolen purse, a trampled garden, a love affair gone wrong. The next morning, the village is littered with the wreckage: overturned stools, torn banners, bits of food mashed into the mud, stains of blood and spilled ale drying in the sun. The celebration is over, and reality returns with a vengeance. For days after, the village is quieter than usual. The master is sullen, cursing the time wasted on festivities. Neighbors eye each other warily, some sporting bruises and blackened eyes, others nursing grievances that will smolder until the next celebration. The children are subdued, the laughter forgotten, the magic spent. You count your losses, maybe a missing tool, maybe a few coins gone from your hidden stash, maybe nothing worse than a headache and a sore jaw. Sometimes the aftermath is much darker. Illness sweeps through the village as bodies weakened by hunger and hard work succumb to infection passed from one to another in close, sweaty quarters. The old and young are the first to fall. You watch as neighbors cough, feverish, their faces pale and lips cracked. The priest mutters prayers and sprinkles holy water, but the sickness ignores him. You know it is the price for a single night's escape. Despite all this, the festivals return, year after year. You find yourself looking forward to them, even as you dread the consequences. They are reminders that you are still alive, that even the bleakest existence can be interrupted by a few hours of noise, taste, and touch, however fleeting, however costly. You tell yourself not to drink too much, not to fight, not to lose yourself in the illusion. But when the time comes, you forget your own advice. Hunger, pain, exhaustion, they all blur into the background for a little while. You eat, you drink, you sing, you shout. You let yourself believe for just a moment that something better is possible. And when morning comes, when the last echoes of celebration fade, you return to your work, your debts, your filth, your hunger. The festival is over. The wheel turns. Life resumes its gray, grinding path, and you are left with only memories and bruises to remind you that you ever felt anything else. You might think that the only certainty in your life is work, or perhaps hunger, but you are wrong. There is one thing more predictable, more reliable, more honest than the rising of the sun or the calling of the tax collector: death. It comes with the inevitability of the seasons, as common and unremarkable as a rainy day. Every villager you know carries the memory of funerals like a chain around their neck, a private catalog of fathers, mothers, siblings, children, neighbors, all lost to accident, sickness, age, or, as often as not, simple neglect. Death visits quietly or in great commotion. Sometimes it slips in at night, a cough turning wet, a fever burning through the long dark hours, leaving behind only a shrunken body and a lingering smell. Sometimes it is abrupt, a falling beam, a slip with the axe, a cartwheel rolling over a skull. There is no dignity in most deaths, no time for goodbyes, no last words of wisdom. Only the sudden halt of a life, already so worn thin, you wonder how it held together at all. You are never surprised by death. When a neighbor does not emerge at dawn, when the coughing behind the next wall falls silent, when the child's cries are replaced by the soft, hopeless weeping of a mother, you know, the village knows. There is no alarm, no panic, only a silent understanding that someone must see to the body. Perhaps you are asked, or perhaps you volunteer, because you cannot bear the thought of the corpse lying there, cooling in the straw, attracting the flies and the rats. There are no coffins for most of the dead. Wood is too precious, your labor too expensive. If the deceased is lucky, someone wraps them in a winding cloth, a sack, a blanket, a patched tunic, whatever is at hand and not needed by the living. For most, the shroud is as thin as memory, and it will not keep out the worms. The burial is as swift as possible. The living cannot afford the time or risk of lingering around the dead, and the ground must be turned while it is soft or before the next rain. You and a few others dig the grave, breaking through roots, rocks, and the clinging earth. The grave is never deep enough, never wide enough. If you are honest, you worry less about the journey to heaven or hell than about the local dogs or wild pigs digging up what you have just laid to rest. The priest comes, if there is one. He brings his thin book and a jar of holy water and murmurs the words that are supposed to offer comfort, though they sound as tired as you feel. If the priest is busy or the weather foul, someone recites a prayer from memory, stumbles through the Lord's Prayer, or simply stands silent, head bowed, waiting for the moment to pass. There are no flowers, no candles, no wailing choirs. Sometimes a song is sung, but more often there is only the scrape of shovels and the awkward shifting of those who would rather be anywhere else. The children fidget, the women weep, the men stare at their boots. No one lingers. As soon as the earth is piled over the body, everyone scatters back to their work, their hunger, their own unfinished business with the world. If the deceased was someone of means, a master, a merchant, a particularly generous villager, there might be bread or ale after the burial, a last feast to honor the dead. For most, there is nothing but the return to labor, the whispered question of who will be next. You think sometimes about your own death. You wonder who will dig your grave, who will say your name, who will even notice. The answer, you suspect, is not many. In this village, death is too frequent, too ordinary to be special. Mourning is a luxury one few can afford. Grief is carried quietly in the lines of the face, the heaviness of the step, the new silence at the table. The dead do not leave much behind. A hut, a few tools, a worn cloak, a patch of earth in the churchyard. Sometimes, if they were lucky or clever, they leave a child who remembers them. More often, they fade as quickly as the memory of last summer's warmth. The world moves on. The rats keep coming. The rain keeps falling. The taxes keep rising. What is left then? You dig, you pray, you say goodbye, and you do your best not to think too much. You have work in the morning. The earth is never still for long, and the living are always more urgent than the dead. The only comfort, perhaps, is that in death, at last, there is no more hunger, no more cold, no more pain, no more shouting masters or clanging bells. You will rest, if only because you can do nothing else, and the village will keep going, one body lighter, one memory shorter. Despite everything, despite the hunger and filth, the blisters and bruises, the rats and the taxes, there are moments, especially at night or in the fog of exhaustion, when you catch yourself dreaming. You do not mean to. It is not wise. But hope creeps in like a draft beneath the door, uninvited and impossible to fully shut out. You imagine sometimes what it would mean to be the master, not your master with his scowls and worries and debts, but a real master, one who owns his tools, who commands respect, who maybe even has an apprentice or two of his own. In your mind's eye, you picture yourself in a proper shop, with sturdy benches and sharp saws, piles of well seasoned oak, and the freedom to choose your own customers. The image never lasts. Reality is always there, ready to slap you back down. The obstacles are endless. To become a master, you need money for tools, for wood, for the right to work in a given town, or to join a guild if you are anywhere near a city. You need connections, and those are harder to find than gold in the thatch. You would have to curry favor with the guild elders, pay bribes, make gifts you cannot afford. Even if you somehow manage to gather the coins, to gain the knowledge, you would have to wait for your own master to die, retire, or take pity on you. None of these outcomes seem likely, and you suspect that if you wait long enough, your own hands will be too twisted and slow to seize the opportunity even if it came. Still, you dream. You imagine moving to a town, a real town, with paved streets and stone houses, where craftsmen eat meat once a week and do not always have to patch the same hole in the roof every spring. You have heard stories from travelers and wandering friars about places where carpenters are respected, where a man might rise in the world if only he works hard enough. Deep down, you do not believe these stories, but you cling to them all the same, repeating them like prayers. Sometimes your hopes are smaller. You dream of a winter's without frostbite, of a spring with a full belly, of a summer in which you do not go to bed itching from lice. You wish for a pair of boots that fit, a coat that keeps out the rain, a dry corner in your hut where you might hide a loaf of bread for more than a day without the rats finding it first. At times, hope comes in the form of rebellion, brief, wild fantasies of running away, starting over somewhere far away where no one knows your name. You imagine the sea, the city, the open road, but every escape requires something you do not have: money, health, knowledge, luck. You know too many who have tried and failed, who returned even poorer and more broken, or who simply vanished, their names whispered with a mix of envy and pity. Most days, hope feels more like cruelty than comfort. It makes your stomach twist, your heart ache, your head fill with impossible questions. Why not me? Why not now? What have I done to deserve this life? And what must I do to earn another? The world offers no answers, only more work, more mud, more waiting. You see hope in others too. The younger apprentices, boys with strong arms and bright eyes, speak in low voices about the future, about the cities, and the chance to see the world. They have not yet learned how heavy disappointment can be. The older men are quieter, their hopes smaller, their dreams more like memories. Sometimes, late at night, you see the master himself staring into the fire, face slack with exhaustion, lips moving in silent prayers for luck, for health, for mercy from the Lord or the weather. The church, the master, the tax collector, and even your own family urge you to be content, to find virtue in patience, in obedience, in humility. You try, you really do. But every so often, usually when you are at your lowest, you remember a story, or a scrap of song, or a traveler's boast, and the old hunger for something more flares up again. The cruelest thing about hope is that it does not die. It shrinks, it dims, it hides itself away, but it always survives, ready to spark back to life at the smallest sign of change, a better harvest, a kind word, a job well done, a rare coin in your palm. And then, inevitably, the world closes in again. The master yells, the taxman knocks, the wood splits wrong, or the rain comes early, or you catch a cough that will not let go. The dream crumbles, and you return to the same rut, the same routine, but still you hope. You cannot help it. It is the only thing in your life that truly belongs to you, that cannot be taken by rats or thieves or lords or even time. It is both your curse and your lifeline, the last luxury of a life spent in the shadows, in filth, in want. And so, despite everything, you let yourself dream, if only for a moment, before you close your eyes and return to the darkness. If you are lucky or unlucky enough, depending on your point of view, to survive the gauntlet of hunger, accidents, fevers, cold, and the occasional neighbor's knife, you might find yourself among the small, shuffling crowd of the village's old. Old in your world means something quite different from what a traveler might expect. You are old by 40, sometimes by 35. At 50, you are ancient, a curiosity, half myth, spoken of with a mix of fear and admiration. The body keeps score, and your body has lost every round. Your back, once strong enough to carry beams, now bends and aches from dawn until dusk. Your joints are swollen, your hands twisted by years of gripping blunt tools and splintered handles. Your knees crack when you move, your hips are stiff and untrustworthy. The pain is constant, a dull, throbbing ache most days, sharp and electric on the bad ones. You learn to work through it, to tune it out when you can, but there are mornings when you simply cannot rise, and those days terrify you most of all. Your teeth, if you still have them, are blackened and broken, more likely to cause you pain than help you eat. Most meals are chewed with gums or mashed into a paste so soft it can be swallowed without effort. The foods you once longed for, meat, apples, bread with a crust, are now enemies, threatening splinters and agony in every bite. Hunger returns, familiar as ever, but now it is tinged with shame. You have become a child again, dependent on the charity of neighbors or kin, if you are fortunate enough to have any left. Your eyes fail next. Reading, if you ever learned, becomes impossible. Carving details, judging the grain of the wood, threading a needle, all slip beyond your reach. The world blurs at the edges, and every shadow holds new dangers. You stumble more often, bruising your shins and pride. The master, maybe now your own son, or someone who once apprenticed beside you, gives you the easiest tasks, the least demanding jobs, but even these leave you gasping for breath. Your hearing goes too, the constant hammering, the endless shouts and curses, the clatter of tools, all conspire to dull your senses until conversation becomes guesswork and you nod and smile at things you cannot quite catch. You miss the gossip, the warnings, the laughter, the stories. Silence grows heavy, and loneliness worms its way into your bones. But the worst change is not in your body. It is in your place in the world. Once you had value, even if only as a set of hands, a back to bend, a stomach to fill. Now you are seen as a burden. The younger workers pass you by, too busy to ask for your stories or your advice. The children tease you or ignore you or sometimes throw stones when they think you are not looking. You move slower, talk less, fade into the background. There is no retirement, no pension, no soft bed in a quiet room. There is only the hope that you will be useful for one more day, that someone will remember a kindness you once offered, that you might be spared a few scraps of food or a place by the fire when the wind howls and your joints burn. Pride, if it remains, is a luxury you can ill afford. You know too many who ended their days in misery, dying alone in the corner of a hut, freezing in the dark, or slipping into sickness with no one to tend them. Funerals grow smaller, your friends and rivals vanish one by one until you are left among strangers, watching as the world changes in ways you do not understand. The language shifts, the customs bend, and you are left clutching memories no one else wants. Occasionally, you are called on for advice, how to split a stubborn log, or which tree to cut for a beam that will last. For a moment, you feel useful again, and the old spark returns. But the world has moved on. Your stories are old fashioned, your skills out of date. You try to pass on what you know, but the young rarely listen, and when they do, they often forget. The church preaches that old age is a blessing, a reward for a virtuous life, a chance to prepare your soul for the next world. You try to believe it. You say the prayers, light the candles, do what you can to keep hope alive. But it is difficult when your hands cannot hold a spoon, when your eyes water from the smoke, when your days are measured not in work accomplished, but in pain endured. You notice things you missed before, the way the cold seeps in earlier each autumn, how the rats seem bolder, how the laughter of children has turned thin and mocking. You tell yourself you are lucky, you have survived. But in the long, slow grind of age, survival feels less like a gift and more like a test you are doomed to fail. Sometimes you dream of rest, not just sleep, but a true deep stillness, a release from the aches and memories and humiliations. You wonder if you will be remembered, or if your name will fade with your last breath, lost among the generations of the poor and forgotten. But for now, you endure. You shuffle through the village, head bowed, shoulders stooped, waiting for the final summons. In old age, you are not honored, not cherished, not even pitied, only tolerated, a living warning to those still strong enough to swing a hammer or carry a beam. You have become a relic, a burden, a story that no one wants to hear. In the end, old age is not a reward. It is the last slow labor of a life spent in toil, a punishment as sure as any handed down by the master or the taxman or the priest. And still, you carry on because that, after all, is the only thing you have ever known. There are mornings when you wake before dawn and, for a moment, do not know what day it is. Then you remember, it does not matter. Every day is the same. a repetition so perfect it might as well be eternity. From the moment you are born in this village to the day you are buried in its muddy soil, your life is a closed circle, a pattern cut into old, knotted wood, worn smooth by generations of calloused hands. You were born into this world, as your parents were, and their parents before them. You learned early what is expected. Obey the master, mind the priest, pay the tax collector, keep your head down. Your days are mapped out for you: work, hunger, sleep, repeat. The faces around you change. Babies become children. Children become apprentices. Apprentices become bent, bitter men and women, or else vanish in the night, never to be spoken of again. The names are replaced. The huts fall and are rebuilt, but nothing changes. You watch as children grow up in the same rags you wore, eating the same crusts of bread, chasing the same rats from the same corners. They ask the same questions. Why must I work? Why must I obey? Why must I be hungry? And receive the same answers, because that is the way it has always been. The lucky few who leave for the city, for the monastery, for the wars, almost never return. Those who do come back changed, or broken, or simply older, their dreams left behind somewhere along the road. Each season brings its own sufferings. Winter is hunger and cold. Spring is mud and floods. Summer is backbreaking labor beneath a pitiless sun. Autumn is the ache of another year's debts, another harvest too small to satisfy anyone. The rituals, the festivals, the feasts, the funerals punctuate the routine, but never truly break it. Even the holidays end in disappointment, in arguments, in sickness and regret. You realize, after a while, that hope is something the world only allows as a cruel joke. You might dream of a better life, of comfort, respect, or even just a moment of peace, but the dream is always cut short by reality: the cry of the master, the snap of a tool, the pinch of hunger, the weight of debt. When you are young, you rage against it. When you are older, you grumble and bear it. In the end, most stop complaining. There is no point. The world does not listen. You see yourself reflected in your neighbors, in the slow, shuffling walk of the old, the hollow eyes of the sick, the sharp, wary glance of the poor. You know you are not special. Your suffering is not unique. You are one in a line of thousands, millions perhaps, who have lived and died in the same gray light, under the same indifferent sky. The only stories told here are those of endurance. There are no tales of heroism, no legends of escape or transformation. There is only the memory of survival, passed down like a battered tool. This is how you cut a beam. This is how you mend a roof. This is how you keep bread from going moldy one more day. Even laughter, when it comes, is bitter, an inside joke shared by those who know there will be no reprieve. When you die, the world moves on as if you never existed. The rats keep gnawing. The master finds another apprentice. The village mutters your name for a week, perhaps two, then forgets. Your tools pass to another. Your hut is patched and claimed by someone newly poor, and the circle continues. The wheel turns. grinding down everything in its path, hopes, bodies, memories, until nothing is left but the routine itself, unbroken, unbreakable, and yet you endure, you wake, you work, you eat, you sleep, you help when you can, you take what you must, you laugh when it is possible, and curse when it is not. If there is dignity in this life, it is not the dignity of triumph or victory or legacy. It is the dignity of survival, of bearing witness to the endless repetition, of refusing to surrender to despair even when hope is gone. You have learned that this is all there is. No promise of reward, no great meaning to be uncovered, no redemption in suffering. Only the hard, cold fact that you are here, and so are others, and together you carve a place, however small, in the wood of history. If anyone remembers you, it will be for your persistence, for your stubborn refusal to give up, for the simple, tragic fact that you endured. The circle closes. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after, and the day after that, until one morning you do not wake, and the world, indifferent and ancient, carries on. This is your life, not remarkable, not glorious, but yours, and that, you realize, is the only thing that will ever belong to you.